Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Technorama Tuesdays webinar series. My name is Hannah Murray. I'm the Student Services and Compliance Officer here at the Community Media Training Organisation. I'm also on the board of Technorama, and I'm here to moderate the session and assist in any of your technical problems, inquiries, so forth. Before we start tonight's session, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land of which we are recording tonight, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. We acknowledge that their sovereignty was never ceded. Tonight, we are taking a deep dive into remote studio setup. So for those of you that attended the CBAA conference, this will be an extension on the information in that session. And for those of you who didn't attend the CBAA session, this will be an in-depth look at the technology and best practice techniques you can employ to level up your remote studio setup. Our wonderful panelists for this evening are Stephen Stockwell from Triple J Hack and a CMTO trainer, Tim Borges from SACBA in South Australia, and Stephen Wilkinson from Hope 103.2 FM. Before I hand you over to them though, we have our President of Technorama, John Maisels, with a few quick messages.
Thank you very much, Hannah, and hi guys. Really good that we can come in tonight with a deeper view of what we were talking about, and feel free to ask those really complex questions. Just want to cover a couple of things, and I'll come back at the end as well. People have been asking about Technorama 21, really, for next year. Well, of course, nobody knows anything, but our plans are that if we can run an in-person gig, we will be doing that. Watch this space, but it will probably be towards the end of second quarter next year. Our AGM is coming up. We've just put it into abeyance temporarily while we sort out a few technological things around actually running the meeting. But, you know, think about whether or not you would like to be getting involved. In fact, I would be encouraging you to get involved with Technorama. One of the things I've discovered is that nothing beats getting involved with your professional or support organization. And it's a great way to do networking. It's a great way to learn things. It's a great way to get answers. And getting involved is so important. So if you've got some interest in that, you can either give me a call, drop a line to info@technorama.org.au, or contact our Vice President, who is not up for election this year. So that's Josh, and he'd be happy to talk to you. That's josh@technorama.org.au. This webinar series will be continuing next year. The next one, we're currently working on that. And if we can pin him down, a certain person who put up a really interesting project on the Q&A group will be dragged kicking and screaming in front of the microphone to give us a bit more information about what he actually did with Raspberry Pis. If we can't do that for December, it will be a feature of early next year. We're very interested in the tech work that you are doing. So if you've delivered a project, or you've done a rebuild, or you've created something that's really interesting and people can learn from that, please let us know, and let's get that in front of everybody. And you don't have to do this on your own. We will help you get the story out. But this is one of the powers of being in a group like Technorama, that you can learn from the road that has been trodden so far. And before I forget, Q&A, where all the action is. It's a really, really good group, very, very good signal to noise ratio, and a great place to get questions answered. So if you're watching this and you're not a member of the Q&A group, you can get there from the Technorama website. Just come up, say, I'd like to join. We'll make sure that you can get in. Thank you very much. I will be back at the end. I'm looking forward to what the guys have to say. Everybody, enjoy, be conversational.
Well, one of us better unmute our mic.
Yeah, look, I can sort of jump in from here. So basically, we'll go through some of the stuff that I was talking about at the CBAA conference. So looking at recording interviews remotely, really what the important part of that, and this is something that Tim and Stephen will get into, is the sort of your studio setup at home. That's kind of your key launch pad for getting a really good quality sounding interview. Certainly on your side is how you're setting up at home. And then when you see some of the stuff that Tim and Stephen are talking about, that's going to be really helpful for getting an idea on how to get whoever you're talking to set up in a room that's going to sound really good as well. So That's the important stuff. Really, you need a desktop computer, you need an internet connection, you need a decent kind of microphone. The one I'm talking to you at the moment isn't the one that I would usually be using for interviews or something like that. It's just a little headset microphone, like you'd use with your iPhone or your Android phone or something like that, which does, a pretty good job. You'll get away with it. Certainly for some of the people you're talking to, that'll work sometimes, so that's fine. Best case scenario though, you want a microphone that you can plug into your computer through some kind of interface so you get a bit of control, and then record that straight in. So that's the first step. And what I'll do is I'll just kind of talk through, a bit about kind of CleanFeed, some of the other programs you can use, let Tim and Stephen have a chat, and then kind of come back, I guess, and show you how some of this stuff works. So, all the questions you might have around CleanFeed and Zencastr, you can throw them at them. We can see if we can break it. You see if you can stump me. There's no prizes for it, but you get to feel pretty good about yourself if you can do that. So, don't hold back. It's all part of the fun. There's basically a couple of services that I've been looking into and using a fair bit this year. So you've got CleanFeed and Zencastr. Now, these are a bit different to what you'd be thinking about when you think about kind of online calls. So they're different to Skype, they're different to Zoom, they're different to FaceTime, all that kind of stuff. That's kind of what I would use. That's what I used to use for a lot of those interviews that I would do, would be getting people up on Zoom or Skype and just recording through a program like Audacity on my computer. That works pretty well in a lot of cases. It's just that CleanFeed and Zencastr sound better, and they're better at it, basically. So these are programs that, unlike sort of Zoom or Skype, they're designed for call recording. Zoom and Skype are designed for kind of video conferencing, basically. And because they're set up for that, they also do a pretty good job of getting the sound through at the same time. Something like CleanFeed and Zencastr, they're set up in a different way, so the focus is on audio. The audio quality that you're getting through that system is a lot better. And they're recording, depending on which program you're using, either recording onto the computer of the person who is talking. So if you're interviewing someone somewhere else, they'll be recording onto their computer. If I'm talking to you from here, that'll record on the computer that's in front of me. At the end of that gets uploaded to the cloud, and then you pull it down and download it back to your computer. And depending on your settings, you'll have that in either one or two audio files that you then kind of match up. The good thing with those programs is you do get a bit of choice as to how you mix that audio. You can have yourself all on one track. So it's you and your guest sort of talking on the same audio file that you might pull down at the end, and then you're basically just kind of chopping that up. Or you can split that track on both of them, basically. Although CleanFeed is the one that sort of lets you do it with one guest a bit easier. You'll have yourself on, say, a left channel, for example, the other person on the right channel of a stereo mix. And that means that you can separate those two tracks when you're in a program like Audacity, and then edit them separately and make sure you're not talking over the top of the other person, all that kind of stuff. They're really, really great programs. They're really easy to use. CleanFeed is the one that I suggest because its free version is a bit better, I find. And it certainly suits me a little bit better as well. So basically, CleanFeed, free to sign up for. You have no limit on the number of guests that you can chat to. It gives you a really high quality audio output at the other end of it. So that gives you a really high quality WAV audio file, which is lossless. So you don't lose any of the quality in that process. So it sounds really, really good. And that's the thing with these programs that you don't get on Zoom or Skype. It sounds much better, not like 5%, 10% better. You're looking at sort of 50 to 100% better than the quality you'd be getting through that other stuff. So I really rate it for that. Basically it's a really straightforward process. You sign up, I'll show you this process in a little bit. You basically jump in, sign up for an account, and then you just invite someone with an email address. They don't need an account. They just click on a link in an email, and that will spit them straight through to basically have a listen to, you and be able to talk through. And you hit record, you kind of control the whole process. You can pause it throughout. It's really like a lot easier than I was expecting, to be honest, when I started using it. The other option is Zencastr. Zencastr is good, and in a lot of cases better than CleanFeed, just not for the way that I use it. So Zencastr is, at the moment, has a free version during the sort of Corona times that sort of it makes it competitive with CleanFeed, basically. So you can have a couple of guests on there. There's no limit on the time you're recording, all that sort of stuff, which is good. That's sort of, that's a bare minimum as far as I'm concerned for a product like that. And certainly it's really helpful when it's free. That's what you're competing with. CleanFeed's free. And it offers you that stuff. Zencastr, usually the free version doesn't give you that sort of stuff. So at the moment, Zencastr, you can have a couple of guests on that. The problems that I have with it, that it downloads or gives you an MP3 file. So it's not a great quality audio file at the end of the day. It's not terrible. A lot of people, wouldn't necessarily be able to tell the difference, but I get picky, so I can tell. And the other challenge with it which is a negative for me, but might be positive for you, is it does quite a bit of processing on the audio that you actually get out the other side of it. So it's doing a bit of vocal processing. So it's sort of amping up the vocal tones in as far as the sort of like the audio, the frequency goes. So it's going to bump up your sort of vocal frequencies in that. And it's also going to apply some noise cancellation and usually a bit of deverb as well, I find, if someone's in an echoey room. I like doing that stuff myself. So I would rather get a high quality audio file from CleanFeed and do that. If you don't like doing that work, or that's not work that you're kind of comfortable doing, then jump into Zencastr, because that'll take a lot of that sort of heavy lifting out for you, basically. So it's really quite good at doing that stuff. It can be quite quick. Again, it's recording either, like, I can't remember, one of them records onto a computer, one of them records onto a cloud somewhere. But basically, when the whole process finishes, you download the audio file from a cloud somewhere, the internet basically, and you get quite a good quality recording on your computer. So that's the long and short of those programs. Again, its setup's really similar to CleanFeed. You basically create an account, log in, click start recording, send someone an email, they get an email, they click a link, they appear, you record. Robert's your father's brother.
And Stephen, did you have that set up on your computer, or did Stephen Wilkinson have that on the computer?
I can show them to you now. What have I got? I've got CleanFeed right here. So let's see if this works. I'm gonna have to now I can't tell if I'm looking at there. What am I doing? Yeah, I think I couldn't work out if I was looking at the Zoom call for CleanFeed or actually looking at CleanFeed itself. So this is basically CleanFeed. And I've logged into this already. The logging in was free. So setup was free, so that's totally fine. So you can see me at the top here. I can also connect and add someone here who wants to surrender an email address.
Well, actually, I think Stephen's got one already set up.
Oh, have you? Stephen, do you want to jump in that?
Yeah, if you want to share.
I'll stop sharing.
Well, yeah.
Take it.
Yeah. And
a couple of clicks. And there I am. I'm connected to
Tim. We go.
And Tim.
Your volume's a little bit quiet, Stephen.
Am I? Sorry. Yeah, I'm connected to Tim, and what's great from a technical point of view is you can click on these over here on the right, the little lines of what's supposed to be like lines of text. Anyway, it shows you all the jitter information and the round trip delay, so that might make it a little easier to see. So it's a 92 millisecond network round trip, so it's from Tim to me and back. So that's pretty acceptable for a two-way conversation.
And we're both on a mobile phone data connection too, I think, aren't we?
Yeah.
So that's a pretty realistic example of what you'd expect in the real world if you were sending it over your mobile phone as data. Yeah.
And it's, a little bit of jitter, but that's pretty good. That's very good. So what I found was great about CleanFeed is, and the paid version, is that you've got a choice of inputs and outputs. And so that's all the different things connected to my computer, all the different audio devices, and I can change also to a different output feed with the paid version, which I think in the free version is whatever the Windows default is, so that's not as flexible. Especially if you're wanting to use it in a studio situation where you might want to set up a mix minus type feed from your desk. And have multiple audio inputs and outputs, at least gives you the flexibility to be able to make those changes.
One of the things I like about this as well, as you have a look, you can see Hope Media 08 at the top, which is Steve, and then you've got Tim just below him. You can't see the, it's not something you can click on, but you can see, under, if we have a look at Hope Media 08, I'm just pointing at the screen here, which is a bit weird. You've got those sort of drop-down menus. So you can see the microphone that Steve's got selected. You can see, I think next to that is the track that it's going onto as well. Is that right? Yep. So that's where it's going onto left, right, mono. And the good thing is when you look at the microphone that's selected on Steve, we can also see with Tim what microphone he selected. So we can't change his microphone selection. But I find that's really helpful if you're talking to someone who's not particularly familiar with the equipment they're using and has maybe a pair of headphones plugged in or something like that. it'll at least, it'll sort of tell you what their microphone is. So it'll be headset plugged in or webcam or something like that. And if you're talking to them and it sounds like they're a bit far away from the microphone, they're telling you, I've got a headset plugged in, and it should sound really good. It should sound similar to probably how I sound at the moment, but they sound really roomy and kind of far away, like they're coming through a microphone, basically, like a webcam microphone. You can actually have a look and go, actually, you've got your webcam selected. You don't have the headphones selected. Click this little drop-down menu, then you can jump back and reassign that. So it can be really helpful because people, a lot of the time, not really sure how that, why something's not working. It's the classic, can you hear me? I can't hear you, back and forth. And with this, you get a bit of an insight into the process, which saves a bit of time, a bit of trauma as well.
And it's good because you can help sort of put your guest at ease as well by, advising them what they might do to change things to make it sound better.
Yeah, well, see, Tim's he's using the browser setting, so which is just the default audio device for the browser that he's opened it up in. Yeah.
Yep. You're still pretty quiet there, Stephen.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
That's all right. But so we can probably. Well, does anyone have any questions about clean feed? There's one there from Heidi. Could you have a conversation on mobile phone quality?
So Heidi, are you thinking with that, that you're recording an interview with the mobile phone as a recorder, so you're speaking into it like this, or are you thinking that you're recording an interview with someone who is on the phone and chatting like you just with a phone call?
We probably can get Heidi in on the conversation, perhaps.
Heidi, if you put your hand up in the participant chat area, I can allow you to speak and ask the question vocally. Oh, look at that. Amazing. All right. We're putting Heidi online.
Okay.
Heidi, you'll need to unmute your own microphone.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Now, Mike has the question he can ask, so I'll leave it up to him.
We're sharing it.
Speak to here.
Generally, they're not the best of quality in terms of broadcast quality. They're fine for the purpose of it's a telephone. Are some phones better quality microphones than others, or what's your thoughts on it?
Oh, the actual microphones in the phones themselves?
Yes.
Look, I suppose they vary quite a bit, but generally they'll be far superior to the bandwidth that the actual mobile connection will give them, generally speaking. And you can plug external mics into most phones anyway if you want to.
But most smartphone
yeah.
microphones are pretty good if you're recording at high bandwidth.
Yeah. And the other thing I'd say as well is with a phone call or with anything like this that someone's on a phone for, always check to see if someone's on speaker or not. I find being on speakerphone as opposed to, holding the phone up to area like we used to with the old school phones, makes a really big difference to the sound quality. If you've got someone who's just sort of holding a phone like this in front of them, a lot of politicians do that. So their media advisor can listen in and other people do it because they're just comfortable with it, put it on a table. I'd recommend when you're talking to them on that, just go, hey, look, are you on speaker? And if they go, oh yeah, I am, just go, just take us off speaker, hold it like a normal phone. And that will, if that's the problem, that'll help tidy some of that stuff up. The other thing is, I'm not sure, what sort of recording stuff you're getting through. If you've got like a little Telzon that's plugged into a phone connection at your studio, which is, you're recording through a phone line, that can be a bit of a challenge. Something I do quite a bit is record FaceTime audio calls or WhatsApp calls. If someone only has a smartphone with them, they don't have, a desktop computer that can kind of set up some of this clean feed and Zencaster and stuff. That can work on a mobile phone. It's not recommended, but you can always give it a burl. But if a mobile, just a normal phone number isn't cutting it, trying to get them on something like FaceTime or Skype or Zoom or something like that on a mobile phone can give you a better quality than just your normal 04 whatever number.
Yep. So is there merit in plugging an external good quality microphone into the phone, or is that being a bit of an overkill?
I'd focus on getting the best connection through the mobile network first, because a better microphone isn't necessarily going to help apart from noise reduction. So the microphone in the phone isn't going to have any directionality to it. So yeah, if you can get something that's directional, like this sort of mic, then that would be good, or an SM57 or 58, or those sort of directional mics. But that's only if there's background noise you're trying to stop. But everything else is pretty much dependent. Like the mobile phone connection is always the weakest link, and 4G seems to be better with voice quality than 3G. FaceTime audio is better than those probably, and on it goes. Skype's pretty good, is it? When you choose a
Skype can be pretty good. I think the big thing, I was actually just having a production meeting with some ABC staff at a pub before this, and we were talking about one of the things that be mindful of when people are using Skype and Zoom is that it can be really good, but how people use it is different. Again, you have people that kind of hold a phone out in front of them, even if it's just a voice call on Zoom or Skype, thinking that it's going to be video, and that's because you're so far away from the microphone when you're holding it sort of out here. That's what can make the difference. But Skype, for an audio call, just on a normal mobile phone, is really rock solid.
Adapters available to go from standard mic plugs to fit into your mobile phone?
Yep, the iRig series of adapters are quite good. There are iRig adapters that go from XLR into the various digital connections, or even just into the headphone sockets as well. I've got some somewhere. I'd have to go over there and find them. But if you look at iRig, IRIG, and there are plenty of others.
There are other
if
brands.
you just, and if you look on our session, the CBAA session that we did, I think we list a few there as well on the slides.
Thanks for the questions, Heidi and Mike. I'm going to lower your hand now, and it actually leads into a question from Belle McQuillan, which is, what external mics would you recommend re smartphones?
I suppose that's really an extension of the same thing, is that try and pick, if you're going to use an external microphone, pick the appropriate one for the job. In a noisy environment, you might want a very directional one. You might have, like, I know even some of the headsets. Oh yeah, thank you, Stephen. Well done, that man.
If people want the copies of the slides from the CBAA session, if you can email me at info@cmto.org.au, I'm more than happy to email them through to you.
But once again, you don't have to get too carried away with fancy microphones if you're going via a smartphone, because the compression on the link is always going to be the weakest link in the chain. Unless you're actually using the data, you're sending data down. Now, did you say you can do clean feed on a smartphone, but it's not recommended?
Yeah, Clean Feed and Zencaster both say we don't recommend. You certainly can't record on a smartphone, and they're both they're very cagey about whether or not it can work. And it does depend a lot on kind of the level that the iPhone or the Android phone's been updated to. So some later updates will cancel out certain sort of requirements that it needs.
If you have Chrome browser on your smartphone, you can use it through that generally. But as you say, it'll work, but it's limited in some of its function. Yeah,
so it's you have it. It certainly wouldn't. I wouldn't recommend against trying it. If you can do it and it sounds like it's working, then it's working. The good sort of thing with Clean Feed and Zencaster is what you're hearing is what you're recording. So if it's sounding a bit shaky, it's going to be a bit shaky. But if it sounds pretty good and they're not dropping off or anything like that, then yeah, keep going.
All right. Now, there was a question that I said to the person that I'd get back to this near the end of the session, but that was about calling yourself to record an interview. Shall we do that now? While we just there's a bit of a lull in questions. Stephen's going to ring me.
Yep,
How does this work, Stephen? I can't remember. So Stephen rings me.
This is still one of my favorite tricks.
Here we go.
There, so Stephen, and I answer the phone call, and then we're chatting away. I'll put you on speakerphone. Oh no, can't do that. Yes, I can. Try that. Talking to your phone.
Talking into my phone.
Yep. Okay. And what I do is I add a call. So there's an add a call button there. And most networks and most phones can do this. I'm going to add a call to my phone, but I'm going to call myself. What's my phone number? That one. All right, so I'm calling myself.
Is not available. Please leave a short message and it will be sent.
And I merge the calls together. So did you see that, how I merged the calls together? And then when Stephen talks, it'll get recorded on there. Yeah. We might just go through that one more time. So just give me another call, because I won't do the audio, but we'll just hold it up against the screen. All right, so answer the call. And then when you're ready to go, add a call, add yourself. So because you're on the phone, it will go to your message bank. When it does, merge the call. And when you merge the call, the third party in the call is your message bank, and it will record to that. And someone said to me today, it worked really well, but I only got 30 seconds out of it. And so your network may place a particular limit on how long that message can be. I know I can get about 90 seconds at least out of this, but this is really just for a very short call when you really want to get some audio. And if it's not long enough, ring them up again.
Yeah. The other thing as well, while we're talking about fun interview hacks with your phone, we've spoken through, CleanFeed, Zencaster, your Zooms, your Skypes. There's a thing that, at least in my team, we call a tape sync, which is where you call someone up on their landline, basically. And when you're arranging the interview, just have a chat with them about the phone that they've got. Call them up on their landline and just go, hey, what I want you to do is I'll record myself at this end, so you can have, a normal, like a Zoom recorder or whatever you've got in front of you, and get them to get out their phone and open up. I'm on an iPhone, so I'll open up voice memos, basically. And they just open up your voice memos, which looks a little bit like this one.
Yep.
And as you start, you just hit the record button. You have the little wiggly lines there that you can see moving up and down as I talk. And just get them to hold the phone about, my recommendation is always sort of like a fist distance to about sort of that far from your mouth, wherever it works. And just get them, while they've got on the phone to you, just hold the phone there and answer your questions while talking into that. Chat away for as long as you want to go for. And then when you're done, get them to stop the recording and then email that recording to you. So then you can, basically you put your two versions, you'll have two audio files at the end of that. You'll have the one that you've recorded on your Zoom or whatever you've been recording on at home. You could also do it into voice memos if you're on your landline. And you put both those audio files into your digital audio workstation and line them up basically with where you'll be able to see, where they stop talking and you start talking on the waveform, and kind of basically line that up. You'll get away with it.
And if you click your fingers, once you're both recording, just click your fingers and you'll have a click on the waveform so that you can line them up. A bit like a clapperboard in the movies.
Mm-hmm. It was that tape sync trick. That's when I learned what the clapperboards were for. It was when someone said, do the click at the start so you know when it matches up, and then I figured that out.
And Belle asks again, if you do the interview calling yourself, how do you retrieve the recording? What happens with my call provider is I'll get a message saying so-and-so's left me a message. And when I press that image there, the audio actually starts playing back to me, and I can share that audio as well. See the audio wave file? So that was us chatting away there. So I can share that, I can save that, I can email it, do that sort of thing. Now, it is going to be network and provider dependent, so you need to check. But, and another variant on what Stephen S will say is that thing of when you want to get better quality audio out of your phone, and what I'm going to do at the moment is, like, if Stephen was to ring me again, and I just plugged in a normal headphone cable into my phone, it's not a headset cable, And so when I answer that, Stephen's voice comes out the speakers.
That's me. Reading again.
All right. So sure, you wouldn't want to have your speakers hooked up. You can't quite see my speakers there, but they are over there. You'd have that connect up to your computer recording. But Stephen, at his end, if I'll mute my audio here and you'll hear my voice come out of Stephen's phone at his end. So that end, it's pretty quiet. There we go. So he can hear me that way. The quality's rubbish, that's fine. But what I'm recording at my end is through this microphone. So I'm getting a good quality recording of me and a good quality recording of him. And it's essentially what Stephen Stockwell was saying before, is you don't have to use the device you're actually communicating with. You can have a separate recording device. So yeah, and that's really worth doing. And you sort of think to yourself, why would I buy a telephone hybrid if I could use that? Because in general, the sound quality over mobile these days is so good compared to a landline, an old copper wire landline. It just makes a lot more sense. But yeah, you end up taping your phone to your microphone like this. But also it does things like, people ask me a lot at SACBAR, how do I communicate, how do I let my announcers have SMS messages coming into the studio? Well, you just have a mobile phone there, and it just appears on the phone. You might say, well, you can't allow any outgoing SMSs on it if you don't want them to talk back to the audience, which is possibly a really good idea. And again, they do have control of a microphone. But, there are simple ways to do this with a couple of old mobile phones that no one's using anymore because the batteries are a bit knackered, but you can leave them plugged in all the time. And it's great. The quality is fantastic. And that's just, that's the trick, is you use a normal headset cable instead of a headset cable. And I actually had a problem today where someone was talking to me and it'd sound fine, but then after a while it would go all weird. And what it was their headset cable, the microphone lead in it had actually broken. And so the phone was just picking up from the handset when they were holding it near. But when they put the handset in the pocket and they still had their headset on, it wasn't actually working through the headset. It was going through their pocket and through their ears. So weird stuff.
And it's interesting as well, something I've noticed over the last few years with Wi-Fi calling and things like that, is that the quality from mobile to mobile will be fantastic. Landline to mobile won't sound as good because, as Tim was saying, it's going through those couple of wires. So it's an interesting one.
And Terry brings up a really good point that most iPhones don't have an audio out socket anymore. You need a lightning converter. Well, don't use a new phone, use an old one. And that's what you find is that theft becomes a non-issue. If you use an iPhone 5 or even an iPhone 6, no one wants to steal them anymore. And they'll still get access to 4G, whereas the iPhone 4s or 4Ss, which are a great phone, they won't have access to 4G. So that might be a bit of an issue. So I think, 5s and above, I think. But there are plenty of phones out there. I'm not just pushing Apple stuff. But yeah, it's a good point, Terry.
Yeah. I actually used that whole way of getting phone calls to air or to recording only the other week for a station that had difficulty in their phone lines were down and they were needing to, of course, record interviews and things and competitions. And so, yeah, they just rang people back on mobile phone and plugged it into the desk and away they went. And so, yeah, it's a great, even if you have hybrids and fancy phone systems, it's a good emergency backup way of doing it.
And the thing is, most small stations now will have like an iPod connector. They'll have a set of RCA cables that people, or can plug into, like the Elan Merlin desks have a set of dedicated cables on channel 1. So the thing is, it's very easy for them to, someone's put this poll right up in front of my face. It's very easy for them to plug in by themselves, No, we're not allowed to vote.
Oh. It is like the...
Sorry, I put that up a bit prematurely.
But I think one of the things too, with all of this stuff, this is a bit of sort of home setup, but having this, having an RCA cable and little lightning connector in a studio when you're going in, that's how I do a lot of my interviews at the ABC. If I'm doing something that's quite a quick turnaround, I don't have long to do it. I've got maybe, half an hour free to do an interview, and then I've got to edit it straight away. Yeah, sort of arranging interviews on Facebook Messenger and then just calling through Facebook Messenger or people on FaceTime is really quick, and the quality, if they're on Wi-Fi with a secure connection, can be really good. You just need to knock something over really quickly, and you're not kind of confident in setting up or working with mic inputs and things like that you might do with Clean Feed or Zencaster. That quality is still really, really good.
And look, in the SAC bar equipment bank, we still have 2 old iPhone 4Ss, and that's for a station if they want to do a quick and dirty OB, and they can just use FaceTime audio, and the phones only have 2 numbers in them. They don't even have SIM cards, but it's all done over Wi-Fi, and one is called Studio, one is called OB, and either one dials the other, and that sets up a FaceTime audio connection, and it's mono. It's probably about 8 kilohertz bandwidth, but it's good and it's reliable and it's easy. And that's, however old an iPhone 4S is now, it's very old. And it works over Wi-Fi. And that was the ironic thing, is I was up in the APY lands, up in the far northwest of South Australia, just sort of below Uluru. And there was no mobile phone connection at all, but the local Indigenous community at Ua had satellite Wi-Fi. So even though my mobile phone didn't work great, these old iPhone 4Ss worked fine because I could just FaceTime straight through them, through their network, through the satellite and back down. It worked.
Yeah. In the talk that we did, we talked about home setups for being able to broadcast from home or record at home, so you can broadcast from home. Stephen, what sort of setup do you have at your? I know you have a bit of a setup at home.
Yeah, so my place at home, I have a Behringer, not a super expensive Behringer mixer, so a small 4-channel mixer that's a USB mixer. So that plugs out of that, goes into my computer through a USB connector, basically. Plugged into that, I have a Rode M3 microphone with a lovely sort of windsock that I borrowed from the ABC permanently. And then I've got sort of around the computer, I actually got a bit of like acoustic foam that I bought off eBay for, I think, $10 for about 24 sheets. So I've still got 12 sheets left over. And I just glued that onto a bit of plastic core flute that I got from Bunnings, and that sits behind the monitors and everything that I've got. I've also got kind of some soft furnishings around, so that sounds really solid. And then I record into, all manner of whatever audio sort of program I'm working with at the time. So either Audacity or Reaper, depending on what I'm making. And I've got, similar to kind of that iRig thing we were looking at before, a little setup that plugs straight into my mobile phone. So I do most of my recording off of my mobile phone for the show. So that's really easy. And the reason that mix is kind of important for that setup. If you're just recording stuff at home, that's really straightforward. Just have a microphone going in your computer. The mixer that I've got has an FX send on it. So I'm able to plug a cable into my phone, send a signal all the way through to the computer to record what they're saying on the computer, but also send my voice that's going through the mixer back to them so they can hear what I'm saying to them on the phone. So yeah, that's the setup that I've got at home. Probably all up, it's not a cheap setup by any means, but it wasn't expensive. I think it probably would have been, a couple $100. I think the main cost would have been the mixer. I already had the microphone, which is I think also about $150. And the core flute and all that was pretty cheap. So yeah.
Yeah, well, you can do a setup as simple as a USB interface where you can plug in a mic, to going to the full hog and having the Rodecaster desk, which you can have 4 mics into and that sort of thing. And I've actually got some photos of some from our presentation, which I'll just click on here. So this is one of the setups of one of my people, one of our on-air people, and so it's quite a fancy setup. It's actually their own private home setup, but he did his half of the breakfast program when COVID happened for about 3 months from his house, and actually we were using Clean Feed as a live codec to get back to the studio. So that's sort of a fancy setup.
Steve,
that's. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Steve.
I was just going to ask, with Microsoft Teams that you've got up there, is that sort of a video conferencing thing? So you'll be going in live through clean feed for the audio, but you can still see the guests
Yeah.
and see who you're talking to.
So our guys are using clean feed for in this situation, and with interviews with people off site, because we haven't had any guests into our studios for 9 months. So they'll send them a clean feed link, and then they'll do so they can have a visual cues. They'll send them a Teams link or Zoom link just to have that visual, or even FaceTime, depending on what the person has. And but yes, in this situation, the co-host was in the studio and the producer, but all had Teams, and so they could all see each other and see what's happening and get those visual cues that are important.
And that is a really good point, is to use those visual cues, that even though you may not be using the audio on, say, Zoom or something like that, but you're using it so that you can do a countdown, and that you can point to people to say you're on, just like you would normally in a studio. You should try and make it as much like the studio environment as possible.
Yeah, and I mean we have remote access to our playout software, so they can see. This guy can see what songs are playing and things like that, or even callers that are coming in for competitions and talkback type stuff. So, so this is an elaborate home setup, I guess. But we've actually also just used Teams at times with some interviews. We found that Teams, the audio quality of Teams takes preference to the video, whereas I think with Zoom, it can be the opposite. But the Teams audio quality is actually very good as well in the things that we've been trying out.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, so just
you go, Stephen.
So, what I was just going to mention with Zoom, when it comes to audio, it'll automatically duck the audio of someone if someone talks over the top. So, if I'm, Steve, if you're talking and I try to talk over the top, it'll sort of drop your audio down, which is really disconcerting in an interview. If you're trying to sort of like react to someone or laugh with someone, it can make it sound really unnatural.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes why you do need to use supplementary feeds, where you might take feeds out, put them through an analog mixer or an external mixer, and mix them back as one feed coming back in, because you will get that ducking effect. We're finding that at the moment. We're trying to set up an awards system using Zoom, like our annual Bilby Awards, and we're having to run 2 or 3 separate feeds and 4 or 5 different computers just so we can get the right effect without ducking people's voices.
That's right.
We've got a bit of a build-up of questions. I'm just wondering whether we can run through these. Someone was saying about, Matt was saying about integrating this into the station equipment workflow can be the tricky part. And Matt, you are quite correct. And I think this is the challenge, is to have a serious talk amongst your technical people and your station in general about what do we want our station to be in the future. Will we have 18 channel desks that are huge? Will we have tiny little desks? Will more and more people do stuff from home? What parts that, like, now that broadcasting remotely is so sort of every day for a lot of people, and the technology is there. Think of all the other people that could get involved in your station that couldn't before, because maybe you didn't have good disabled access, or maybe they couldn't get in easily to your station, and they can actually do remote shows. How do you integrate that into the whole politic of the station and the station rules as well? I mean, there's a whole series of things.
It's a whole culture thing as well. Yeah, culture of the organisation.
We've got a question from, sorry.
No, that's right. And I was just getting down to the, I just going to go through the comments first, and and the phone service over NBN rather than mobile. I think John pretty much answered that NBN can be great too. And this is something to remember, is the old phone system, the old POTS phone system, and the reason we have hybrids is because we're converting a 4-wire signal, which is 2 wires for your microphone and 2 wires for your headphones. We're converting that into 2 wires in the telephone in the street and converting it back again. So there's a whole heap of technology called quadrature transformers and things like that makes it all work. And to descramble that so that you get a nice clear recording at the other end, you need to have a hybrid. But because with mobile phones, it's 2 separate data streams going each way that never collide, essentially. It's a lot easier. That's why all this stuff got easier. It's nothing magic. that me and Stephen came up with. It's just that the technology got better, and this is the normal way of doing it
and
now.
VoIP handsets are the same as well. Yeah, they're already pretty much a hybrid because it is separated. So.
Yeah. The old school, totally legal way of doing this in the old days with POTS was you just use the hands-free function on the handset, but that would be naughty, and it's not really relevant anymore. And mobile coverage is hopeless. Well, yes, that's true. So going up to Heidi's question, how do you set up a connection to interview someone not in the same location as you and connect to a newsroom at the same time? Three-way connection. I suppose that merge function that I showed you on the phone would work if you were doing it over phones, but
CleanFeed would do that as well. Zencaster would do that. So they're tools you could use that as well. You can have 3 people, you have a few different voices in them.
I think they sort of say with CleanFeed 5 is a good upper number, is that? But more is possible. Yeah,
there's no, again, I haven't tried, but reading through the feed for open guys that make CleanFeed, they sort of recommend up to 5 is pretty fine and rock solid, but there's no upper limit. So all you're going to lose as you go higher is people are going to there'll be a bit of a delay going back and forward. And the quality of the call might drop a bit as well. So you might end up with as high quality in the end. So that's basically what you've got there.
And there was a question from Bell for Stephen S.
Yes.
Can you see that one?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. So with podcasts becoming a prevalent medium for radio shows, would you recommend out of the Behringer podcast kit or Mackie bundle, most recommended was the Rodecaster? Bell, I actually didn't know about either of those things until I saw the question. So I Googled them. And I mean, the Rodecaster is kind of that's your sort of gold standard for this sort of stuff. It's, it's like a radio desk that you've got at your home, but it is expensive. I haven't, like in my very quick search, I couldn't bring up a price for either of the Podcast Studio or the Mackie one. So the Behringer one or the Mackie one. What I'd recommend first though is I'm a big fan of being able to kind of like, build something that's kind of straightforward to start with. So depending on what you're doing, if you're looking at just recording a conversation at home with a couple of people, getting a Zoom recorder or something like that, and just sort of like good mic technique where you're moving between people, or everyone maybe getting a Zoom, like getting a small mixer, sort of not dissimilar to the one that I've got, which is just kind of one of the cheapest Behringer mixers you can get your hands on, plugging a few microphones into that, having the outlet plugging into a Zoom recorder and recording that with everyone with their own microphone, and a bit of good mic technique and everyone wearing headphones, you'll get a pretty good quality, quality recording out of that. So that's kind of where I'd recommend starting, is kind of figuring out what you want to do. If it's going to be with people that are with you, if it's going to be with people that are remote, CleanFeed can be really good. If you get a microphone in your computer, you can record it all on CleanFeed and you can edit it after that. I think I look at the Rodecaster and I go, oh, that'd be nice to have, wouldn't it? But I can't think of anything that I can't do with my cheap setup at home that I can do with the Rodecaster stuff. So it's about, what I'd recommend is kind of, of those two, this is just a really quick and nasty look. I wouldn't worry too much about the Mackie because the focus of that seems to be up here on monitor speakers, which you don't really need. They're nice to have, but they're probably going to overcharge you for them. The microphone looks quite nice. And I'm sure the headphones are great, but yeah, that's sort of selling you something you probably don't need with that. With the Behringer setup, that's a nice little mixer. You could probably get that mixer sort of individually, and it might end up being a bit cheaper. There's another bit of kit with that as well that I can't tell what it is.
Can you share your screen, Stephen?
Yeah, I'll just chuck it up for you.
Yeah.
It's going to be a bit weird because it's on the small side screen. So let's see how this comes across. What have you got there?
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah. So I don't actually know what that is.
That's a USB audio interface, and I tell you what, buy a bundle of those. I say to stations, buy about 2 or 3 of those because they're not too bad. Those little USB interfaces, they're only $40 or something, and they're handy if you've got a bit of an issue with the dodgy sound port on your motherboard thing. Yep. They're not whiz bang, but they're good. They're good for $40.
Better than nothing.
The thing I would say, because I spent a bit of time looking at this sort of kit when I bought my setup at the start of the year when I got sent home from the office, and they were like, "Don't come back to the ABC until we say so." And I haven't been. Today's my 5th day back. So yeah, the little thing you're seeing here, I'm not sure if you're looking at the same thing I'm looking at, which is this bit here, this little bit in the middle. You can get a USB version of one of them. The Xenix brand is the same sort of like, level of kit that I use. And there's a USB one of them that will go straight into your computer and save you having that little extra bit of kit that's just next to it.
That's sort of what that sort of thing is. That's a USB microphone. And we had plenty of those examples on the slides for the
Zoom
CBAA thing.
Zoom people, the interface Zoom people, they've come out recently with a new one called the H8, I think, or something like that. I think it's in response to the Rodecaster. So it's like a little desk, but it's got 4 inputs and that sort of stuff. So depending on what you need as far as inputs go,
Just Lloyd mentioned that he lives in Toowoomba and mobile coverage is hopeless. I was talking to Stephen about this earlier in the week. It's a funny thing in a way, because I mean, where I'm coming from now, I'm about 300 k's north of Adelaide, like we're the last town before the desert and Broken Hill sort of thing. I have fantastic 4G here because I'm on the Optus tower and everyone else in the country thinks we've got to use Telstra because we're in the country. And so no one uses Optus much. And so I get 90 megabits a second, from my local tower, maybe 20 up. And that's excellent. So I don't have a landline at all. If you are having issues with mobile coverage, especially if you're trying to use mobile for your OBs, look at using an external antenna, because sometimes you might find that you can point it at another base station a bit further away if you've got a high gain antenna, and you can actually get a much better signal as well. And I think, and Stephen was saying, in Sydney, you wouldn't think of probably using 4G to try and do an OB because it's so congested.
Yes.
I had a situation a long time ago where we tried to do an outside broadcast over 4G from the, I think it was the port in Broome. And little did we know that most of the comms at the port of Broome were running on 4G. And so you couldn't get anything. There was complete dead spot.
And there's a good point that John makes about, look at the Q&A about finding the nearest phone tower, because there are databases that will tell you that. But the other thing on that too is, this is what's changing too, is like this is a satellite phone. This is a Thuraya one that I have here because I only have mobile connection. Once we lose power here for more than 6 hours, this is my only link with the outside world. But this will do data, and this goes to a geosynchronous satellite. It's a lot cheaper than the other satellite phones. It only cost me $15 a month, and you can ring me on this, and you only pay whatever your phone network charges. You don't pay satellite costs, but it will do data. And even though you pay $5 a meg for it, this one will do about 16 kilobits a second. And we were looking at the clean feed spec, or the Opus spec that clean feed uses, and it could squeeze down there. We were trying to do it the other day, but we didn't quite get it. But this is what's going to happen soon. Is you've got SpaceX putting a gazillion satellites up in low Earth orbit. You will be able to buy, if you're in Canada, you can already buy these, a pizza box that sits on your roof and will track these satellites, and you can have 100 megabits a second internet from anywhere on the planet. Now, it's still a couple of years away for us, but you can see where this stuff is sort of going. So it's not just about remote broadcasting from home. It's not just about doing an OB. It's much bigger than that, of like, what's your community radio station going to look like in 20 years time or 5 years time? Because all this is changing it. Do we need 4 studios? Do we need a station at all? Maybe you just have a transmitter and everyone's in the pub broadcasting. Who knows? Sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Sounds like Stephen this afternoon.
Yeah, exactly. The speed that it's changing is really interesting, because I remember when I first started at 4ZZZ in Brisbane, which would have been probably a bit over 15 years ago, maybe 15 to sort of 17 years ago where I started. About 15 years ago, we were doing outside broadcast, borrowing kind of an OB kit and the old lines of big reams of telephone cable that plugged into a codec, and then you had another one at the station that was always a nightmare and worked like 3 times out of 5. And we bought a little USB internet dongle, a little web book, like really cheap little notebook, and just set up a private MP3 stream with a service in the US that cost us next to nothing, and just send that link to the station, and the station hit play in a web browser, and that picked up what we were doing down at like the old museum or something like that. And that was cost us nothing. It was a really quick way to do it, and it's getting easier and easier and easier. I was never thinking that, when you look at something like CleanFeed, the ABC spends loads of trying to get really high quality programs. I think they'd probably basically commissioned an app from the Thailand people, so you could get guests on a really high quality line, from a mobile phone, but you need to have the really expensive kit at the receiving end to make that work. And then you've got CleanFeed, which is free, which sounds as good, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
So it's really getting really accessible, and the quality is getting really, really good.
Well, and it's very reliable, because in the 3 months that we were using CleanFeed for our breakfast program, I think there might have been 2 or 3 times in that 3 months that it just dropped out for no reason, but connected back straight away. So it's been pretty reliable.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
So I'm just wondering, of some of those people that are in our poll that are not super confident, not confident at all, or even worse, are you feeling any more confident? Or is there any sort of questions that you'd like to ask that you think would help you feel more confident? I suppose at the end of the day, experimenting is great. And work together with other stations, maybe buy some gear together and experiment with it. I mean, in South Australia, and once again, I'd encourage you to get involved with things like, Technorama or whatever, but in South Australia, we have SACBAA, and we have a huge equipment bank, and we just buy stuff to experiment with it, and it often doesn't work the way we intended, but we often use it for something else. So, that's really great if you can develop a bit of a cooperative where you can experiment with equipment, but at least on, say, the Technorama Q&A Facebook page, you can see how other people have done stuff, and you can get an idea from them whether it works or not. So that's, it's worth its weight in gold, that page.
If anyone has any questions that they'd like to ask our wonderful panel for this evening, if you want to pop your hand up in the attendee list, that would be great. That way you don't have to type your question. You can ask and get a real-time response, just like that. So I'd encourage you to do that. Oh, I don't have my video on. I should do that also. Hello. I do exist. And just while we're waiting for questions to come in, thank you so much to our wonderful panel for this evening. We have Stephen Stockwell from Triple J Hack and CMTO Trainer. Catch him everywhere, basically. Tim Borges from SACBAA. You can catch him in the Flinders Ranges, but also Adelaide at large. And Stephen Wilkinson from Hope 103.2. I don't know where to catch you, basically
Sydney.
Everywhere as well. Sydney.
Yeah.
Sydney.
I haven't been to
Sydney at
Brisbane.
large.
I
No.
normally go to Brisbane a lot, but I haven't been there for a long time.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Patricia has a question. I'm going to allow you to talk, Patricia, so get ready to turn on your microphone. All right, just unmute yourself and you'll be able to answer your question.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Thanks very much. This has been a wonderful podcast. I'm really enjoying it. I missed half of it, but so I'm going to ask you if I can get a copy of all of those slides and the equipment that that was displayed. One of the questions I have is about soundproofing in your home to broadcast. What would be the minimum that you'd need really to sort of protect your broadcast from interference, like streetcars or aeroplanes? I have that little bit of a problem. I really do want to broadcast from home, but I am close to the flight path here in Sydney, and even though I'm broadcasting on a Saturday, there's still enough flights to disturb me. So I want to take some measures, and I'm asking about soundproofing. Any suggestions?
I think really your best bet will be to find the right sort of microphone. Quick, Stephen, to the slide deck.
Yeah.
Can you bring up that one with the microphone? That if you're in a really bad situation like that, where you've got a lot of low frequency rumble from jets, you may end up like, I'd suggest a directional microphone like an SM58 or something like that, held close to you, will probably, your voice will drown out the noise, and you'd probably have a noise gate on there so that when you weren't talking, you'd work out what the average background noise was, and you turn a noise gate up until it basically turns the microphone off until you speak. You can do the same thing writing the fader with your finger as well. But that picture of Richie Benode, where was that one? That one there, that lip ribbon mic. Yeah, if worst case comes to worst and you want to fork out, what are they, $800, $1,000?
Yeah,
they are expensive.
1,200. They look beautiful.
Yeah, but you can have people screaming, for their cricket team 5 meters away from you, and that microphone will cut out most of that noise because it uses a slightly different technique to pick up your voice, and it will only pick up your voice if you are directly in front of it. That's why it has that little guard on the top there, is to align it with your mouth. So, those sort of things. Even shotgun mics will work to that extent too, where a shotgun mic just picks up what's directly in front. And so if you block everything else out, that will help. But yeah, aircraft are difficult. So I'd say a cheap solution would be a noise gate and a SM58 or something like that.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for that.
Yeah, something dynamic that's not too sensitive. Also, the furnishings in the room would help. I mean, it's not going to cut it out, but it will help as well.
And also, sometimes the room that you're in, if you're in a sort of an internal room rather than a room that's sort of got external windows or something like that. I mean, I'm not sure where you are in Sydney, Patricia, but if you're in Marrickville, I mean, you need to build a bunker under your house if you want to get rid of the aircraft noise, unfortunately.
Just as bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just about to say, I live in Ashfield and I'm right on the train line and under the flight path. And the way I know it's remote studio nightmare, right? But I've negated that by getting some heavy curtains for the place that I'm recording in, and also just going to Clark Rubber and saying, please, do you have any, acoustic foam? It's not all that expensive if you just get the offcuts and just strategically place it around your microphone setup.
Yeah, I've just decided I will broadcast from my bedroom. It's probably the safest place, and only 2 windows, and it's also a music show, so it's not that I do a great deal of talking, but I want to do it live, and I don't want to have, hang on, the airplane's going over.
Yep. Feel that on a spiritual level, Patricia.
Yeah. And so if you do get something that you can use with a noise gate, that will help a real lot once you get good at setting a noise gate up.
Okay. I'll do that. Thank you very much.
No worries. And I think Hugh's comment about surely a directional mic is less noisy. And that's sort of true in that, it will pick up the noise coming from your mouth if you pointed at it rather than the other noise. Hopefully that's what he meant to say. Oh, free soundproofing. I can see there's a flood of people heading towards Adam Watkins.
You're muted. Hannah, you're muted.
Yep.
You might have to drop, thank you. You might have to drop that in the Tech Q&A Facebook group for people to take you up on that very generous soundproofing offer, Adam. But for now, it looks like our questions have dried up. Thank you so much to Stephen, and Tim for your expertise and generosity with your time. It's very much appreciated by myself and everyone in the session, I'm sure. Before people log off for the session tonight, we do have a message from John Maisels, our president, again. Hello.
That sounds so formal.
Oh, sorry. John's going to talk to you about stuff.
Well, I just wanted to come back and sort of reinforce the value of Q&A. So I've just dropped a question into Q&A saying, well, what do people do about soundproofing? For instance, if you want the technical answer, anything better than about 45 dB background noise, if the planes are going overhead, you should be okay. If you've got 65 dB background noise, it's actually pretty easy to build like a box in a box that will lose about 30 dB of noise. That's actually not hard to construct. Curtains, as you've suggested, there are lots of things you can do, many of which will completely piss off the rest of the household. But you can actually achieve this. The other way of looking at it is maybe just build it into your program. Actually, use the OB theory that says, a bit of Atmos probably goes a long way. Can be very annoying if it's planes and trains and automobiles all at once, Hannah, and we need to talk to you about that. But anyway, a discussion that's just been started in Q&A. So, maybe somebody will bite and say what they do. I know that at least one of the people who is on this broadcast at the moment actually shipped an outside broadcast studio shell up from Sydney and has installed that in his house. So he has the full studio inside the house. Not everybody's going to go to that level.
No. We have a hand up from Carol North Samadzik. Can I pop that through? Go. Great. Carol, you're allowed to speak. Unmute your microphone, please.
Well, I'm going to put a female's point of view in terms of soundproofing. I used all sorts of things, and I now use a cardboard box inside a cardboard box with a crocheted blanket over the top.
Love that. Yeah. Love that a lot.
And it works.
And in fact, one of the tips that I was given by somebody who does voiceovers a lot, she went to IKEA, bought one of those, you need an Allen key to put it together cupboards, covered the inside with Sonex foam. It works extremely well. So inside that, she's got the microphone set up. Behind the microphone, she's got one of those, back absorbers. Behind that is a Sonex foam. When you open up the doors, you've got a bit of absorption either side of you, plus absorption to the back, which is how you stop it sounding terribly boomy. And it could be the female point of view. She wanted something that would still be guest friendly. So when she's finished, she shuts the doors and it just looks like a billy with doors on it. I think it's not a billy. She used something that was deeper than that, but basically cost her $100 plus the Sonex.
That's great. I love the crochet touch too.
Yeah.
That's the soft touch,
That's beautiful. Sound. Beautiful.
And
Thanks
I like
so much.
the idea of working the sound. If you really can't get rid of the sound, work it into the act. So put some really good stereo microphones in, mix them in a separate channel so that when the train goes by, everyone knows it. And use binaural microphones and sort of say to people, you should listen to this show with your headphones on, so that you can hear it. And do the train report. Turn it into a train spotting thing.
I know. Next week we're going to have this absolute flurry of community radio stations doing the train show.
Yeah. I don't know how many people would be invested in how many trains leave from Ashfield Station, but we'll find out together, won't we? Yeah. Thanks so much for your question, Carol. That's great. Thank you for sharing your remote studio setup tips. Anyone else before we let you go? Just while people are still here, if you can please fill out the feedback that pops up after the webinar stops. It's really handy for us to know what you're interested in having as the next Technorama sessions. We're just in the development of our 2021 season, so your ideas will definitely be thoroughly examined, and we really want to make sure that this is relevant for you and that it's stuff that you enjoy learning. So please definitely fill the feedback out. Definitely say that, Hannah's a great moderator, Tim's very good example person. Yeah, just tell us everything you thought and more. And the session slides from the CBAA conference will be put up on the Technorama website, as far as I've just been told by Mr. Maisels. So,
we can do anything.
So check out our website, which is technorama.org.au, and you'll be able to find heaps of technical information there, links to everything. So thank you very much.
And there is a link to this broadcast, which will be going up, plus every webinar that we've done in the series for the last 2 years, all available via the Technorama website. If you can't find them anywhere else, there is actually a YouTube group, I think, where they all fall in, but finding them via the Technorama website is probably the easiest way. Cool. Great. Well, look, just while we're waiting for any very last questions, I'd just like to throw in a couple of people have popped up and signed up for the Q&A group. One of the things we do ask is that you answer the 3 questions. There's a really good reason for this. I mentioned earlier that the Q&A group has a really good signal to noise ratio. People don't go around flaming each other. People, you know, we just don't get that stuff. And that's because we know who everybody is. Part of that is the questions. So it's not about being exclusive or anything else. It's just so we know who you are. If something ever does come up, and every once in a while something does, we can go back and just go, oh yeah, we know exactly who that person is. Get in touch with you, whatever. But mostly it's it's a really good, safe place to be, regardless of skill level, orientation, gender, age. It's just one of those places where everybody's prepared to jump in. So if you're going to join, you do need to answer the questions, because we do have a policy that says if you don't answer the questions, we're not going to let you in, or we might throw you out. Something that we're also looking for is if you've got tips. You can certainly put tips into the Q&A thread anytime. That's a great thing to do. But we want to bulk out the website with collections of tips, collections of war stories, and particularly longer articles. We'd like to sort of move into this area. So if you feel like writing something, we'd like to hear from you, and we'd be happy to publish that. We're also looking for some help. You know, this is one of these, we keep saying we'll do this, and nobody does. Facebook is really crap for finding stuff after the fact. What would be really great is if we could mount a project to go back and trawl through some of the great discussions that we've had on Q&A and distill those down into articles that will have a longer life, and put those on the website where they can be searched and found. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in doing, please get in touch with me offline. And if you'd like to join us and help with the committee work, please get in touch with any of us. Anybody who's on the committee, everybody's on the website. You can go and ping any of us. Just go and have a look at the about page, or search on board in the search field. You'll find us. It's not that hard. And thanks, guys. Thanks to the team. It's a very interesting session.
Thank you everyone for coming along, and thank you to our wonderful panel and John, and have a great night. Stay tuned, sign up to the CMTO bulletin and the Technorama mail out. Is it bulletin? It's still bulletin. Sorry, I just had a moment. To find out when the next Technorama Tuesdays webinar series session will be. For now though, good night and have a fantastic evening. See you later. Bye.
Bye.